things that we've been really trying to emphasize in this time is family worship. We've been talking about private worship, and we're talking about family worship. And so we're going to kind of talk about just some big overarching things today. And we'll dive into some of the details in subsequent videos. So what I want you to understand is how you worship will impact what it is you believe. Worship, as we've said before, is a response of what we value most. Every person has an altar. Every altar has a throne, and whatever's on that throne is what you worship. Worship is what you value most. So it could be money, it could be status, it could be success, it could be sexual gratification, any of those things. And whatever's on that throne, whatever you're willing to fight for and guard against, or to knock down anything that prevents you or stands in the way of you and it, that is what you worship. And if Jesus is on that throne, right, then it's not that nothing else matters, right? If Jesus is on that throne, if he's what matters most to you, it's not that nothing else matters, it's that nothing else matters as much. Okay, so I want to define worship real briefly here. We get from Psalm 19 that the reason for our very existence as creatures is to glorify God. Worship is the duty of all living things. But as Christians, it's not only our duty, it should be our desire. We should delight in the worship of God. And we get a biblical definition of what worship is that you hear us talk about at King's Church a lot from Psalm 29, that it's giving the Lord the glory due his name. And so worship is giving the Lord the glory due his name. It's an integral part of parenting for the Christian. Your children will know how much Jesus should matter to them and how big of a role their faith should play in their lives by seeing how much of a role it plays in your life. And if Jesus and the Bible are just something that you talk about on Sundays, right, your children are going to learn that religious stuff is supposed to just kind of stay over here off to the side. The one doesn't have anything to do with the other. It's not really a part of how they live their everyday lives. It doesn't have anything to do with their work or how they raise families or what their goals in life are. It's just sort of compartmentalized. And so we don't want that to be the case. It's important that parents, fathers specifically, are remembered for pointing their children to Jesus. And so that's what we want to see from you guys. It's what's expected of fathers. The discipleship of your children, raising them in the discipline and the instruction of the Lord in Ephesians 6, we'll look at that later on in some other videos, is primarily your responsibility, right? So family worship's not a supplement to what your children are getting from Sunday school or the kids program at your church. Okay? Sunday school or the kids program at church is a supplement to what you're doing every day at home. So it's not just this isolated to one day a week. So think of as we continue to talk about this, as we talk about family worship, think of your children's emotional and spiritual development as a garden. Okay? In a garden, you can't grow what you don't plant. And I've said this before, you can't plant pumpkins and get strawberries. And here's something else to consider too. Not planting anything doesn't yield zero, it yields weeds. That's what happens when you don't give a garden the attention that it needs. A garden needs time, it needs attention, it needs thoughtful planning and pruning and gentle care to produce a good crop. So suppose you're convinced, right? Suppose you're convinced you ought to do family worship, you want to do it, you see the reason to do it, and you just haven't. Y'all, dads, don't beat yourselves up, okay, that you haven't done it until now. Don't feel like it's this should riding on your back that you can't seem to shake off and it's just bearing you. You feel bad for not doing it. I want you to know I was right where you are. Okay, so Backing up a little ways, when we had Noah and Benji, so I just had 2 of the 5 at the time. I think Noah was 2 and Benji was 1. I felt like I needed to be doing that. I needed to be leading my family in worship and hadn't been. And I had no idea where to even begin. I felt silly and kind of strange to even try doing this because they were so young. I wasn't really sure what I could possibly do. And honestly, I felt embarrassed that I was going to have to do this in front of my wife, Amanda, who hadn't seen me do it before, and she was going to have to watch me like fumble and fail. I had all those worries and concerns, but I made the decision to start, and now my children love it. They really do. They look forward to it every day, and I'm absolutely blown away by what they're able to know and understand at their ages. I mean, I would have never guessed it. So it's never too late. Just commit to starting now. So let's talk real quick about some of the elements of family worship. What kinds of staples, what kinds of things ought to be included? What would be helpful sort of guides and things? I would say this. Bring it down to read, pray, sing, and catechize. All right? Bare minimum is read, pray, sing. Read, pray, sing. I'm not suggesting you only start with that and put the catechism part way off until the end, and we'll talk about that more later. I think that starting really small, really early on with catechisms is really important. But if the wheels are falling off, right, you wanted to be able to spend, maybe 12 or 15 minutes doing this together as a family before the kids go off to bed or something like that, and you're 6 minutes in and you can't reel them back in, it's a lost cause. Keep it short. Read, pray, sing. Read, pray, sing. Okay? This time should be something that your children look forward to, not dread. You don't want to drag them through this class. Well, we said we're going to do this for 30 minutes and everybody hang on to your seats. We're in this for the long haul and we're not going to stop until we hit the 30-minute mark. That's not the idea. Don't drag them through this. Don't make this something that they hate and try to avoid and get out of. This should be something that they look forward to and something that they remember as adults that they did as a family on a frequent and regular basis. All right. So when we talk about read the Bible, y'all, I'm telling you, it's amazing what your children can pick up. So I love some storybook Bibles. We like to use Kevin DeYoung's The Biggest Story. Those things are great. The illustrations are wonderful, the pictures and whatnot. And they do, some of them, I think a fair amount of them, do a good job of showing the story of Jesus throughout the Bible. I think it's terrific, okay? Use that, but read the Bible to your children, okay? The Bible says faith comes by hearing, hearing by the word of the Lord, not by the word of the author of your favorite illustrated children's Bible. Use those things. Use them as a supplement, but get the word into your children. Read a verse, or if you're memorizing a verse, memorize it from one of the regular translations of the Bible. They can understand it. The next thing is pray. Let them hear you pray, and give them opportunities to pray, and sing. What I would suggest is maybe pick 5 songs that you really like that have some weight to them. Okay, Matt and I have actually talked recently. We'd like to be able to share with you some suggestions about some songs because we learn through song, don't we? I mean, that it gets singing truths about God kind of brings stuff from the head down to the heart, and so. We want to talk to you a little bit more about music and coming videos. I don't know when, but what would be terrific for your family right now and the start is just to pick 5 songs that you want to keep in a rotation and know them well, and do that. If you don't play guitar or piano, or you couldn't carry a tune in a bag, you can always put something on your Spotify or Apple Music playlist and create a playlist of those songs, and you can sing along with the recordings. That's fine too. All right, and then lastly, catechize. Now this is something we'll end up zooming in on each one of these little things in some other videos. I'm just going to go over them real briefly, but we're talking about things like the Lord's Prayer, the Apostles' Creed, the 10 Commandments, and catechism questions. For centuries, y'all, for centuries, Christians have discipled other believers, both children and adults, using these things: the Lord's Prayer, the Apostles' Creed, and the Ten Commandments and catechisms. So pick one. Don't think for a second, right, that every time you get together for family worship, whether that's a devotional in the morning or it's in the evening, like we like to do it, you don't think you have to go through every one of these things. Now we do. Well, we actually do, but we didn't start there, right? All they're doing is now in sort of a maintenance mode, reciting things that we've learned already. If you're just starting off, pick one and just work on it for a few weeks and practice that, and then you can build on that later. The Lord's Prayer, teaching them how to pray. And eventually you can work through the petitions, what we call the petitions of the Lord's Prayer, and use it as a pattern for your own prayers. The Apostles' Creed, y'all, the Apostles' Creed is like the Christian's Pledge of Allegiance, right? When I was growing up in school, every morning we pledged allegiance to a flag. And that's something we did as good citizens of the country we live in. Why wouldn't we recite the Apostles' Creed as our pledge of allegiance to our King, as good citizens of His kingdom, right? There's just a richness to it. There's a richness to it, and there's some deep truths you can draw out and point to be able to instruct your children. So that's one of the reasons we like to use that. And then the Ten Commandments. You know, your children reciting the law of God not only familiarizes them with the perfect character, the perfect moral character of God, but it helps them recognize where they fall short of it and their need for salvation and renewal. And it creates avenues for questions about who Jesus is and why He had to die and what he accomplishes in the lives of His believers. And then the catechisms not only teach basic Christian doctrine, but they show us how to live according to God's law and how to pray. And when we catechize our children, they learn the basic truths of the Christian faith, and we reinforce and deepen our own knowledge and understanding of them as we instruct our children in them. So, kind of summarizing here, family worship is not about hammering truths into your kids' brains so they stick. That's not what it's about. It's important that you not only recount Bible verses. Bible memory is good. Memorizing and rehearsing catechism questions is good. But you want to engage your children. You want to encourage them to ask questions and make it conversational and respond to what they've heard or what they just sang, right? Make it conversational. They need to learn how to actively think and communicate the information that they're getting. So it's not just an information download. They're not just regurgitating information. If they're all intellect and no heart, they won't be a whole person. And that's what we want, is a whole person with a full-orbed biblical worldview. So make it conversational. And then just to encourage you, some of the outcomes that we're looking for, some of the goals as parents that we're looking for and that you can expect by God's grace, is by the time your children leave home, they'll have made a journey through the story of redemption, through the Bible, several times. You'll have hit on these major themes through the use of some of these tools that we're talking about. And they'll incorporate this teaching and spending time with their families, worshiping God, maybe in the same way. We pray that that's the case. The hope is that in God's covenant faithfulness, this practice of family worship will carry on from generation to generation to generation for His glory and for the good of mankind. So some encouragement: your children are not too young to learn some deep truths. Many times when people do this, they discover that their youngest children, they receive the blessing of their youngest children actually being able to teach them truths about God through their questions, through their responses to things, and through their just childlike perspectives about what we're telling them about the Bible. As far as age levels and stuff, don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. This is not primarily teaching. Although we are talking about teaching things, we're worshiping God together as a family. That's the goal, okay? So my oldest is 6, and then it goes down from there, 5, 4, 2, and like 4 months old right now. We don't do something different for the 2-year-old. Okay, so he can't answer all the questions. We're not working as hard on memorization with him as we are with the 6 and the 5-year-old, but he's with us together. This is how we spend time together as a family. And that's what he's a part of. He's a part of the family. He's a part of worshiping God together with us. And he's seeing his brothers do this other stuff. He wants to do that. He wants to get to that point. He's tuning in. He's listening. So don't feel like you have to chop it up and do something different because you've got this wide range of ages of children in your family. I don't think it's necessary at all. So practical points just to kind of get you started. Again, we'll zoom in on some of these specific things and give you more information. But basically it's like this. Pick a time. Pick a book. A book of the Bible along with a supplement like a storybook Bible. Pick some songs. So pick a time, pick a book, pick some songs. And try this. Dad, open up in prayer the first time you do it. Ask the Lord to bless your time together and that you would, as a family, know and love God better. And read a Bible verse or a passage. And just ask questions. If you have a story Bible, do that too. And sing a song or two. That's it. If you have young children, let them move around and dance. I would encourage you to do that. Something we do that works well for us and that our boys just love is if we have time for 2 songs, and we don't always, we're not super dogmatic about it. Like, well, unless we've done all of these things, we haven't really done family worship. No, it's not like that. It's going to look a little different on some nights than others. Sometimes we might spend 15, 20 minutes. Right? They were really attentive. It was a sweet time. They had good questions, and we spent a little more time in it. Other times, it's like 8 minutes. I get halfway through the first song, and somebody's just, smacked somebody down off the couch because they were playing too hard, dancing. That happens. It's real. That's hashtag real life. But we try to do a sitting still song. And then a dancing song. We tell them, we want you to, celebrate, be joyful, dance for Jesus. Our boys love dancing around the room to one of the songs that we might be singing. But then we'll also have a sitting still song because we want to teach them that there's a time and a place for both, right? And that's it. So in closing, hear me say this. This is the biggest point that I want to make. Strive for regularity, not perfection. Strive for regularity, not perfection. Just get started and keep going. Figure out when in your day you're going to do this and just keep going. It's not going to be perfect. It doesn't need to be perfect. I trust that as you continue to do it, and we know that the Lord is faithful, it will get better. Just make it a part of your rhythm of life as a family. And remember, we're here to help you. Nothing would delight me more than to have someone call me in the next couple of days or coming weeks and say, hey, I'm trying this and it all fell apart, and to hear some of your stories. I've been there. I've so been there. So I'd love to hear how you're messing it up, right? Because you're doing something and you'll be able to build on it later on. So for now, pick a time, pick a book, and pick some songs, read, pray, and sing. May the Lord bless you.